Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Downing Street insists that David Cameron will still push for curbs on in-work benefits for EU migrants in the UK, despite earlier briefings suggesting the contrary. The Prime Minister will head to a crucial summit later this week to make his case for a reformed British relationship with the EU. However, several newspapers, citing official guidance, report that Mr Cameron has failed to convince other European leaders and is already preparing a fallback to replace his original demand for a 4-year wait for in-work benefits. Here's the Sunday Times headline. It says, Prime Minister caves in on migrant benefits. Sunday Telegraph describes it as Mr Cameron's climb down on EU benefits. And The Independent on Sunday goes with the same metaphor, describing it as Cameron's big EU climb down. Let's speak now to a prominent Conservative backbencher, MP Peter Lilly. He was a cabinet minister in the Conservative governments of both Margaret Thatcher and John Major. Peter Lilly, welcome to the programme. The Prime Minister is thought by many of your colleagues not to be asking for a lot, yet he might not even get what he's asking for. Could he sell a watered-down deal to his party?
Well, it's more a question of whether he can sell whatever comes out of it to the country. This isn't a party business, and there are lots of Labour MPs who want to see democratic powers return to this country from the European institutions. That's the key issue as far as I'm concerned. He will clearly get some things because a lot of this has been pre-negotiated, as it were, so he'll get something to say about removing the phrase ever closer union, something to do with benefits, even if actually it's something we could do anyway ourselves, like apply a 4-year wait to British citizens as well as foreigners. So there'll be something. The question is, will it be substantial? Will it include a return of powers to this country to govern itself?
Well, what major powers is he asking to be repatriated?
Well, publicly, there doesn't seem to be anything on the list unless some change in relation to free movement of labour, giving us power to do things that we don't currently have, is somewhere up his sleeve. I do occasionally hear rumours that he's going to surprise us all and come back with some genuine return of powers. If he does, I'll be dancing on the rooftops.
But he's not asking for any of that. We have no evidence that that's even part of the negotiation.
Well, that is certainly disappointing. It's rather a strange strategy not to ask for the principal thing we want and yet still hope to get it. Because we have, over a series of treaties, which David Cameron and I voted against, conceded a whole lot of powers to Europe beyond what is necessary to run a common trading area. We all accept that that requires some common lawmaking. But beyond that, we concede a lot of powers. We'd like to get some of that back and to start the process of getting those powers back. If we don't, and we can't, then we'll be very much on a slippery slope to creating a single state. The reason we're in the position we are, we're having to renegotiate, is that the countries of the Eurozone are on an escalator to creating a single state. There's never been a currency without a state and a government to run it, equipped with powers to tax, borrow, spend, regulate, transfer money and so on. They're forced, because they've created this currency, without a government now to create the government to make it work. The question is, can we be outside that process? Can we actually move in the opposite direction and get powers back? Or will we be sucked on in the slipstream?
Okay.
And if we can't overcome the sort of two doctrines of Europe, that everybody's heading in the same direction, albeit at different speeds, and that powers can only ever go to central institutions and never come back to member states. If we can't break those two doctrines as far as Britain's concerned, then he'll have not really have achieved
Okay.
anything. If he
All right,
even
no,
can
hold
break
on,
those doctrines in quite small respects,
I understand all that.
I think that was a great triumph.
I've got a quick final question for you. If he comes back with even less than he's asking for, would you vote to leave?
If he doesn't come back with some increase in powers to govern ourselves, I fear I would, for the first time in my life, be voting to leave. I voted to stay in 75, but I would vote to leave in those circumstances.
Peter Lilly, thank you for joining us this morning. Tom, it's turning into a real mess for the government, is it not?
It's a huge mess. Yeah, there was a wonderful little expose yesterday of something called The Call. I don't know if you've come across this. The 11 p.m. call every Saturday night, which from Downing Street, coordinated by Downing Street Switchboard, which all the press officers and special advisors and ministers going on Sunday broadcasts have to tune into. It was over the Blair years, and it was fascinating to hear the ministers. I can only imagine the horror which underwent between sort of 10:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. last night during The Call, which still happens, over the headlines this morning. I think what's happened here is the 4-year ban on migrant benefits is dead.
It's just, think it is got. He's just not going to get it.
It is dead. It died, I would say, at least a month ago when the Chatham House speech, when the Prime Minister first wrote to Donald Tusk. He said so in his speech by saying, here's what I want, but by the way, I'll also accept anything else you choose to offer me. So my paper and others and Sam's reported the next day that 4 years was effectively dead in the water. So what we're talking about now is the choreographing, how it happens and whether the Prime Minister himself has to withdraw it or, which is what I think might happen, someone else might put something else on the table at the summit on Thursday, doing the PM a favour, perhaps Germans, perhaps the Dutch, to bail him out and say, OK, if you don't want this, how about that?
Peter Lilly said, when I said, can he sell this to his backbench? He said, oh, well, it's a problem for other parties too. But this is overwhelmingly a problem for the Conservatives. And if he cannot even achieve what he's asking for now, I would suggest that at least half the parliamentary party may well not go with him on this.
I think it's really interesting to look at those headlines which talk about this big climb down. I think it's not the climb down I would query, but the big. I mean, I very rarely agree with Dominic Cummings, who's leading one of the Vote Leave campaigns.
The Leave campaign.
But he said he's asked for trivia and he hasn't even got that. I mean, he needed one sort of totemic issue that looked like he was doing something about immigration, which we know is a really big issue. Even he couldn't look at the free movement of people or any kind of EU migrant cap because those things are just not going to be happening without treaty change.
Peter couldn't tell us of any major power he's asking to be repatriated.
So he's asked for quite small things and not even got those. I think it's going to be very hard to make at any point look like he's come back with something really emblematic and everyone can say, OK, that's changed my mind and now I'm going to vote to stay in.
So we don't think there'll be a deal done this week. In fact, almost certainly not. It's now being pushed back to February. If he gets one in February, can he have the referendum in June? Can he have it in September? I understand the Electoral Commission doesn't like the idea of a referendum that would overlap with the May elections, local, Scotland, Wales. And the risk in September is that we'll have another summer migrant crisis, and that would be a terrible atmosphere for those who want to stay in the European Union.
There are an awful lot of hurdles. I mean, first of all, you've got to get a deal in February that looks like a success. And at the moment, the reason they've done what they've done overnight is because it's all being dragged down into a kind of quasi-legal quagmire. And David Cameron's got to have a big picture conversation with all of his EU counterparts in order to make it sort of set the entire renegotiation back on the right track. Can they sort it all out by February? Well, I know some people in Brussels are saying if you can't get a deal by February, March, we're never going to get a deal, and if it slips into 2017, you won't get a deal then either.
George Osborne's view.
But then in June, there is the tiniest window, because of all of these different now electoral and legal hurdles, there is only a tiny window at the end of June where you could practically hold a vote because of the Electoral Commission, because of other commitments the government made in law. That looks fleetingly difficult. But then, as you say, you've got the migrant crisis, which pops up over the summer. I'm told that actually dealing with the Turks and the flow of migration from Turkey will make an enormous difference to the optics of how Europe is seen to be able to deal with the migration crisis. So actually, even though that doesn't have a huge impact on UK migration from the rest of Europe, David Cameron's renegotiation depends on something that is truly out of his control.
OK, so you tell me it depends on the Turks now. We'll see how that works out next summer. And joining us to gaze into our crystal ball with the panel for 2016 is the Conservative MP, James Cleverly. Welcome to the programme. If the Prime Minister can't even get his minimum demands in the renegotiation with Europe, would you vote to leave?
Well, I've always felt that the best chance that David Cameron's got of getting a good result from Europe is if there's a credible Leave campaign, with people like me saying that if we don't get a deal that's good for Britain, we would campaign to leave. And that might feel like a stone in his shoe at the moment, but unless the people he's negotiating with genuinely believe there's a chance that we're going to campaign to leave, he won't get the best deal for Britain.
But the people he's negotiating with don't believe at all that he would ever lead a vote Leave campaign, do they?
I'm not so sure. And if the poll
do you?
results, he might. He said that he might. I take him at his word.
Well, he hasn't. He just says he rules nothing out. No one really believes that the Prime Minister wants to leave the European Union or would lead a campaign to do so.
But if the country as a whole is making those kind of noises, then the people the Prime Minister is negotiating with, our partners in Europe, may well think that it's in their best interests to give him the kind of deal that he's looking for.
Should he be asking for more?
The Prime Minister is always at his best when he's being bold. I think he could and should be bold, but cheeky with some of the things he asks for. But we should recognise he's not going to get absolutely everything. It's not about getting everything.
But
it's
should
about
he
getting
be
a
asking
good
for
deal.
more than he's asking?
Well, he's already said that he's going to look at different ways of getting the results that people want about things like migration, about our international relationship with the world outside Europe. And the particular vehicle that he uses to get those results shouldn't be quite so important as the results themselves.
I mean, what you're not saying, but it's clear what you think. He should be tougher with Europe.
I don't think it's possible to be tough enough with Europe. We've got to keep pushing, and if we get something, push for more, keep pushing, because ultimately the deal that he comes back with is going to be judged by the British people, not by us politicians.
No, we understand
by the British
all,
people.
all that.
So it needs to be simple and
Tory
sellable.
politicians say that simply because they don't want to answer the questions I'm trying to answer, because that's just flannel. Let me try and get back to this. If he cannot, even most Conservative backbenchers I speak to think what he's asking for is not nearly enough. If he can't even bring that back, I'd suggest to you that he will not carry a majority of his MPs in Parliament.
The deal on the table at the 11th hour, we've seen this from the Paris climate summits. The deals are done in the 11th hour. So we will know what deal is on the table only at the 11th hour, and then I and the rest of the British population will judge that deal when we see it.
Yeah, but hold on. When you negotiate, you don't come out with demands and then as the negotiation goes on, make these demands even greater.
Yes, you do.
You end up being put away. So what
yes,
should
you
he?
do.
What should he? Well, I've never seen a negotiation like that, but good luck to you. What demand should he ask for that he's not asking for now?
Well, I've always said that I'm not going to try and second guess, because you have to trade things here. You have to give a little bit there, and you have to take a little bit there.
I'm not asking you to second guess. I'm asking you to tell me, what do you think he should be asking of Europe that he is not asking at the moment?
Well, I think most people would agree that we want to have better control around who gets benefits in
No,
the,
he's
in the
asking
country.
for that. Let me try one more time, then I'll give up. What should he ask for that he is not asking for at the moment?
Well, as I say, I'm not going to second guess that. You can keep
I'm
pushing
not
that.
asking you to second. All right, I give up. Okay, I know when I'm beaten.